I never wanted the spotlight. Words were my sanctuary, characters my closest confidants. Behind my keyboard, I could architect entire worlds without ever having to step into one. That's the irony of being a screenwriter. You create the moments everyone remembers, but nobody remembers you, until Fractured Horizons changed everything. My script about a man's psychological journey after losing his memory in a car accident somehow landed on the desk of Paramount's head of development. Within weeks, I went from editing insurance documents to pay rent to fielding calls from agents who couldn't pronounce my last name correctly. Alex Mercer, James Rothwell's people want to discuss the lead role in your script. James Rothwell, the man whose face launched 1,000 box office hits, the industry darling who could sneeze on camera and critics would call it revolutionary. I still remember the exact moment I met Sarah, the New York Independent Film Festival, where I'd been invited to a panel about emerging writers. I was sweating through my only decent button-down, convinced I'd been invited by mistake. She was sitting third row, center, a vision in a simple black dress, her dark hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. When she asked a question about the vulnerability in my protagonist's arc, I knew she'd actually read my work, not skimmed it, read it. Your character's pain feels lived in, she said afterward, approaching me at the reception. No pretense, no industry small talk. Like you've mapped the geography of loss. 3 hours later, we were still talking in a corner of the hotel bar, the rest of the room a blur of voices and clattering glasses. Sarah Donovan, 28, classically trained actress who'd done mostly theater and a few indie films. Originally from Boston, living in LA for 5 years. Loved Chekhov and hated green peppers. Laughed like she was surprised by her own joy. Most actors I meet want to know how I can help their career, I told her, emboldened by my third whiskey. Most writers I meet think actors are just pretty puppets, she countered with a slight smirk. Maybe we're both pleasant surprises. I proposed 6 months later. We married in a small ceremony on the California coastline 3 months after that. My parents thought it was rushed. Her friends wondered if we were expecting. But when you find someone who sees you, really sees you, why wait? The call came on our honeymoon in Bali. James Rothwell had officially signed on to play Michael, the amnesiac architect in Fractured Horizons. Production would begin in 8 weeks. This is it, babe, I whispered against Sarah's bare shoulder as we watched the sunrise from our villa. Everything changes now. I didn't realize how prophetic those words would be. Sarah's reaction to the James Rothwell news was odd. A flash of something crossed her face before she composed herself into excitement. Later, I'd recognize it as calculation. That's amazing, she said, kissing me deeply. He's perfect for the role. The shift was subtle at first. Sarah volunteering to drop off revised pages to the production office when she happened to be in the area. Her sudden interest in the behind-the-scenes aspects of filmmaking, the way she'd casually ask about my meetings with James. I'm just excited for you, she'd say, fingers trailing across my chest in bed. It's not every day your husband works with an icon. I believed her because I wanted to, because the alternative meant acknowledging that the woman I'd fallen for so completely might have seen me as a stepping stone all along. Then came the first table read. James sauntered in like gravity bent around him differently. When Sarah arrived to surprise me with lunch, his eyes lingered on her a beat too long. Something unspoken passed between them. Familiar. Electric. Have you two met before? I asked later. No, of course not, Sarah laughed, a little too lightly. I'd remember meeting James Rothwell. The text appeared on her phone while she was in the shower that night. I hadn't meant to snoop, but her phone lit up on the nightstand. And there it was. Same time tomorrow? He's getting suspicious. My stomach turned to stone as I heard the water shut off. I placed her phone exactly as I'd found it and pretended to be asleep when she returned, her skin still damp and smelling of jasmine. That night, I lay awake beside my wife of 5 months, listening to her breathing and wondering if every moment between us had been performative, the greatest acting job of her career. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I'd use the very tools of my trade, character development, plot twists, and the power to determine a story's end. If Sarah wanted James Rothwell, I'd make sure his character became increasingly repellent on screen. If she married me for my talent, I'd use that talent as my weapon. And if she thought she knew me in bed, I'd show her exactly how well I understood her body, alternating between worshipful attention and cold distance until she couldn't tell desire from manipulation. "Everything all right?" Sarah asked that morning, studying my face across the breakfast table. "You seem different." I smiled and reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Just thinking about some rewrites," I said. "I think Michael's character needs more complexity." My revenge had already begun to take shape, each calculated word and touch a page in my new, unwritten script, one where I, not James Rothwell, would control the narrative. What I didn't realize was how many plot twists still awaited me. I've always understood character motivation. It's the foundation of compelling storytelling, what drives people to make the choices they do, especially the destructive ones. Now, I was dissecting my wife's motivations with the same clinical precision I applied to my fictional creations. The production of Fractured Horizons moved into full swing. I volunteered to be on set daily, claiming I wanted to be available for script adjustments. In reality, I was watching, cataloging every interaction between Sarah and James, the casual touches, the inside jokes that materialized out of nowhere, the way their conversation would halt abruptly when I approached. "You're working too hard," the director told me one afternoon. "The script is brilliant as is. Go home, get some rest." But home had become a stage set, a place where Sarah and I performed the roles of devoted husband and wife, while the real drama unfolded elsewhere. I began my counteroffensive with the script. In the original version, James's character Michael was sympathetic despite his flaws, a man struggling to reconnect with his identity, and the wife who stood by him through trauma. In my revised pages, Michael became increasingly narcissistic. His memory loss transformed from a tragic accident to a convenient escape from his failings. "These rewrites are interesting," the director said carefully after reading them. "Darker. Just following the character's truth," I replied. James was less diplomatic. "What the fuck, man?" He cornered me in the production office. "You're gutting everything that made this character redeemable." I met his perfect blue eyes with practiced calm. "I thought you wanted a challenge, something to showcase your range beyond playing likable heroes." His jaw tightened. "This isn't about my range. This is about the story you claimed to be passionate about." "Stories evolve," I said. "Sometimes the characters reveal themselves to be different than we initially perceived." The subtext hung between us like cigarette smoke. Was he sleeping with my wife? Did he know I suspected? His expression gave nothing away. "Fine, it's your script." He turned to leave, then paused. "But don't forget, I'm the one bringing your words to life. The audience will see this character through me." The threat was veiled but unmistakable. He could sabotage my writing with his performance, make Michael sympathetic despite my rewrites. That night, I initiated the second phase of my plan. When Sarah returned from a friend's birthday dinner, no mutual friends I could verify, no photos posted on social media, I was waiting in our bedroom, lights dimmed, her favorite jazz playing softly. "What's all this?" she asked, a hint of wariness beneath her smile. I approached slowly, tucking her hair behind her ear. "I've been neglecting you, too caught up in the production." Her body tensed briefly, then softened as I traced my fingers down her neck. "You've been distant," she admitted. "Let me make it up to you." I kissed her with a passion I didn't entirely have to fabricate. Whatever her deceptions, my body still responded to hers with muscle memory. I made love to her that night with deliberate attention to every detail, every spot that made her gasp, every rhythm that built her toward release. I drew it out until she was trembling, vulnerable, until the walls she'd constructed came crumbling down, and she whispered my name like a prayer. Afterward, as she lay curled against me, satisfaction radiating from her like heat, I stroked her hair silently. "What are you thinking?" she murmured. How well I know you, I said truthfully. Every part of you. She shifted to look up at me, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. For a moment I thought she might confess everything. Instead, she kissed me softly and said, I'm going to shower. The pattern continued for weeks. At work, I systematically diminished James's character while building up the supporting roles. At home, I alternated between nights of passionate attentiveness and cold withdrawal, keeping Sarah perpetually off balance, craving my approval yet never quite secure in it. I noticed changes in her. She started declining meetings to stay home with me. She became more attentive, asking thoughtful questions about my day, preparing my favorite meals. Was it genuine remorse, or just another performance? I couldn't tell anymore. Then came the industry party at the producer's Malibu home. Sarah wore a burgundy dress that clung to her curves like it was painted on. I watched James's eyes follow her across the room, saw the almost imperceptible nod she gave him. I'm going to mingle, she told me, squeezing my hand before disappearing into the crowd. 20 minutes later, neither she nor James was anywhere to be seen. I found them on the secluded balcony off the second-floor library. They weren't kissing or touching. They were talking intensely, heads bent close together, Sarah gesturing emphatically while James shook his head. Can't keep doing this, I caught him saying, as I approached silently. We don't have a choice, Sarah hissed. It's too important. Your marriage won't survive. They both froze when they noticed me standing there. Sarah's face drained of color. James straightened, expression shifting to casual neutrality with actor's precision. Alex, Sarah stepped toward me. We were just discussing the rewrites, James interrupted smoothly. Sarah was giving me her perspective since she knows you so well. The lie hung in the air between us, so transparent it was almost insulting. Interesting, I said quietly. And what perspective is that, exactly? Sarah recovered quickly, her training kicking in. That you're pushing the character to darker places because that's where the truth of the story is. I was telling James he needs to trust your vision. I looked between them. My wife and the man she might be sleeping with, both lying to my face with professional conviction. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of power. They thought they were the ones with the secret, but I was orchestrating everything from the shadows. How lucky I am, I said, to have such a supportive wife. I took Sarah's arm, perhaps a bit too firmly. The director was looking for you, James. Something about tomorrow's schedule. He hesitated, eyes moving between us before nodding curtly and leaving. Alone with Sarah on the balcony, the ocean crashing below, I pulled her against me and kissed her hard. She responded with surprise, then matching intensity. Take me home, she whispered against my mouth. Now. That night's lovemaking had an edge of desperation to it. Was she compensating for guilt, trying to distract me? Or did she truly want me despite whatever was happening with James? As she slept beside me afterward, I made my final decision. It was time to know the truth, no matter how painful. The next day I would leave my phone recording when I stepped out for a call, and let Sarah's own words either condemn or exonerate her. I just never expected those words would destroy everything I thought I knew about our marriage in ways I couldn't have imagined. Morning light filtered through our bedroom curtains as I mentally rehearsed my plan. Sarah stirred beside me, her arm draped possessively across my chest. For a moment, watching her sleep, I almost abandoned the whole thing. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. How had we arrived here, where I was plotting to record my own wife without her knowledge? But images flashed through my mind. The text messages, the hushed conversations, the inexplicable absences, and my resolve hardened. I kissed her forehead gently. I have to head to the studio early. Reshoots for scene 27. She blinked awake, pulling me closer. Stay a little longer. You've been working too hard. Can't, I said, extricating myself from her embrace. The production won't wait, even for the writer. I injected a bitterness I didn't have to fake. The bitter irony was that Fractured Horizons was becoming the most important project of my career, while simultaneously destroying my marriage. As I showered, I calculated timing. Sarah usually called James, or whoever she was really seeing, within an hour of my departure. Our house was small enough that a phone in the bedroom would pick up a conversation in the living room or kitchen. I just needed to ensure it seemed natural to leave my phone behind. Over breakfast, I set the stage. There's supposed to be an important call from the producers today about the rewrites. Can you let me know if they call the house? My phone's almost dead. Of course, Sarah said, passing me coffee. Do you want to take my charger? No, I'll use the one in my car. I made a show of checking my phone. Actually, would you mind if I leave this here to charge while I'm in the shower? I'll grab it before I go. She nodded absently, already scrolling through her own phone. In the shower, I mentally mapped the next steps. The recording app was already open, hidden beneath other apps. All I needed was to forget the phone when I left. Dressed in my usual jeans and button-down, I grabbed my keys and laptop bag. All right, I'm heading out. Sarah looked up from the kitchen table. Don't forget your phone. My heart skipped. Right, thanks. I walked to the bedroom and picked it up, discreetly starting the recording and sliding it between books on the nightstand. Actually, I think I'll leave it charging. The battery's been terrible lately. Are you sure? What if the producers call? They can reach me through the production office, I said with calculated casualness. Besides, a few hours without constant script notes might be good for my sanity. She laughed, the sound almost genuine. Fair enough. I kissed her goodbye, lingering just long enough to seem natural, but not so long she'd suspect anything. I'll be home around 7. Don't wait on dinner if you've got plans. I'll be here, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The drive to the studio was torture. Every traffic light became an eternity as my mind raced through possibilities. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe I was manufacturing a conspiracy from coincidences and misunderstandings. Maybe. But deep down, I knew. Writers develop an instinct for human behavior, for the subtle tells that reveal hidden motives. Sarah's performance had cracks, and through those cracks, I'd glimpsed something that terrified me. At the studio, I couldn't focus. I moved through meetings in a fog, nodding at appropriate intervals while my thoughts remained in our bedroom, with the phone silently gathering evidence. Alex! Alex! The director snapped his fingers in front of my face. Are you with us? I asked what you thought about cutting the hospital sequence. Sorry, I mumbled. Didn't sleep well. The hospital sequence stays. It's foundational to Michael's character development. James, seated across the conference table, narrowed his eyes slightly. Thought you were all about stripping away Michael's humanity lately. There's a difference between humanity and likability, I countered. The audience needs to understand him even if they don't sympathize with him. The director sighed. Can you two work this out? We shoot that sequence tomorrow. Fine, James said tightly. Alex, let's grab lunch and discuss. Trapped, I nodded. The last thing I wanted was to spend an hour across from the man who might be sleeping with my wife, but refusing would seem suspicious. We walked to the studio commissary in uncomfortable silence. Once seated with our food, James leaned forward. What's going on with you? He asked bluntly. I don't know what you mean. Come on. The rewrites, the mood swings, the way you look at me like you're imagining my slow death? He set down his fork. If there's a problem, let's address it directly. The perfect opening. I could confront him now, demand the truth about him and Sarah. Instead, I heard myself say, the problem is you're playing Michael as a saint when he's anything but. You're undermining the script to protect your image. James sat back, surprise flickering across his features. That's what this is about? You think I'm not committed to your vision? I think you're committed to being likable, to maintaining the James Rothwell brand. He was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. You really don't get it, do you? Enlighten me. He shook his head. Not my place. But Alex, you might want to consider that you're not the only one trying to tell an important story here. The cryptic response only intensified my suspicions. What story was he telling? One that involved my wife. I cut lunch short, claiming another meeting. As I walked back to the writer's room, my phone rang. Not my personal phone. That was still at home. But my temporary production phone. Sarah's number. My heart pounded as I answered. Hey, what's up? Her voice was strange, tight. Where are you right now? The studio, like I said this morning. A pause. With James? We just had lunch. Why? Another pause, longer this time. No reason. What time did you say you'd be home? Around 7. My throat felt dry. Sarah, is everything okay? Everything's fine, she said too quickly. I'll see you at 7. She hung up before I could respond. The rest of the day crawled by with excruciating slowness. I left the studio at 5, unable to bear the tension any longer. As I drove home, scenarios played through my mind. Sarah packing her bags. Sarah with James in our bed. Sarah having destroyed the evidence. Our house was quiet when I entered. No Sarah in the living room or kitchen. I moved silently to the bedroom, heart hammering. She wasn't there either. But my phone was, still nestled between the books. With trembling fingers I retrieved it and stopped the recording. 6 hours and 43 minutes. I plugged in my earbuds and sat on the edge of the bed, steeling myself before pressing play. Minutes of silence passed. Sarah moving around the house, water running, ordinary sounds. Then, about an hour in, the distinct tone of her phone ringing. Hey! Her voice, slightly distant but clear enough. He just left. A voice responded, but too faint to make out. No, he was acting weird this morning. Insisted on leaving his phone here. I think he suspects something. My breath caught. I don't care. Sarah's voice rose. We're in too deep to back out now. James agrees with me. So there it was. Confirmation. I felt strangely hollow as I continued listening, fast-forwarding through stretches of silence. Nearly 4 hours into the recording, I heard our front door open and close. Footsteps. Then Sarah's voice again, closer this time. She'd entered the bedroom. It's me, she said, presumably on her phone. I just checked his phone. He left it recording. My blood froze. No, this might actually work in our favor, she continued, her voice taking on a calculating edge I'd never heard before. James is just a stepping stone. Alex's brilliant writing is what I really married into. Once I establish myself through this connection to James, I'll have Alex write me the role of a lifetime. He has no idea I've been studying his process all along. I don't need him, just his talent. And the best part? He thinks I'm in love with James. I nearly dropped the phone, my entire body going numb. Not an affair, something far worse. I'd been right about being used, but completely wrong about how and why. The sound of keys in the front door jolted me back to reality. I yanked out the earbuds just as Sarah appeared in the bedroom doorway, her expression unreadable. You're home early, she said softly. I held up my phone. So are you? Something shifted in her eyes. A predator recognizing another predator. Did you hear something interesting? She asked, stepping into the room. Everything I needed to hear. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Sarah smiled then, a cold expression that never touched her eyes. No, Alex. You heard exactly what I wanted you to hear. What do you mean? I managed to ask, though the question sounded feeble even to my own ears. Sarah leaned against the doorframe, studying me with the clinical detachment of someone observing an experiment. The woman before me bore little resemblance to the one I'd married. Same face, same body, but occupied by someone I didn't recognize. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? She laughed softly. The phone positioned just so, your sudden willingness to leave it behind when you're normally glued to it. Please, Alex, I'm an actress. I understand staging. She moved further into the room, perching on the edge of the dresser, keeping distance between us like she was blocking a scene. And those things you said, I struggled to maintain my composure, about using me for my talent, about James being a stepping stone. Oh, that. Her smile turned almost pitying. Do you know how easy it is to deliver lines when you know your audience is listening? I figured if you were going to spy on me, I might as well give you something worth hearing. My mind raced, trying to separate truth from manipulation. So you and James aren't sleeping together? She shook her head. God, men are so predictable. That's where your mind went immediately, isn't it? That I must be fucking the handsome movie star. Her crude language felt like a slap. In our months together, I'd never heard her speak that way. Then what is going on between you two? Sarah sighed, examining her perfectly manicured nails. Something far more interesting than an affair, but I don't think you're ready to hear it yet. Anger surged through me, burning away the shock. I'm not playing games, Sarah. Either tell me the truth or what? Her eyes flashed. You'll punish me more? Cut me off emotionally? Use my body against me? She pushed off from the dresser, approaching me slowly. Did you think I didn't notice what you've been doing? The hot and cold treatment? The calculated touch designed to make me desperate for your approval? I flinched. She'd been aware of my tactics all along. Writers, she continued with a dismissive wave. You think you understand human psychology because you can craft fictional characters, but real people are much more complex, Alex. And what about our marriage? I asked, my voice barely audible. Was that all fiction too? Something flickered across her face. A crack in the performance, perhaps. Not entirely. Before I could process that, my phone buzzed with a text. James, we need to talk. All three of us. I'm outside your house. Sarah glanced at my phone screen and nodded. Perfect timing. You planned this, I accused. No, she corrected. We planned this. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime surreally at odds with the situation. Sarah maintained eye contact as she backed toward the bedroom door. Coming? She called out. I remained frozen on the bed, the recording still playing silently on my phone. Part of me wanted to flee, to avoid whatever confrontation awaited. But a deeper part, the writer, the observer, the architect of narrative, needed to see this story through to its conclusion. I followed Sarah to the front door, watching as she greeted James with the casual familiarity of old friends, not secret lovers. He stepped inside, his expression grim when he saw me. Alex, he nodded. I assume Sarah's filled you in? Not exactly, I replied coldly. But I heard enough on the recording. James glanced at Sarah, who shrugged. He heard what I wanted him to hear, but I haven't explained yet. Jesus, Sarah? James ran a hand through his hair. This isn't a game. Isn't it? She challenged. Isn't everything in this town a performance? A strategic move to get ahead? She turned to me. Including your little rewrites. Did you really think diminishing James's character would hurt me somehow? The three of us stood in an awkward triangle in my living room, the room where Sarah and I had spent countless evenings planning our future. Now it felt like a set, dressed to resemble a home, but fundamentally artificial. Just tell him, James urged. This has gone far enough. Sarah considered this, then gestured to the couch. Sit down, Alex. This might take a while. I remained standing. I prefer to hear it like this. Always protecting yourself, she observed. Always maintaining control of the scene. Fine. She took a deep breath. James and I aren't having an affair. We're making a documentary. I stared at her blankly. A documentary. About the exploitation of writers in Hollywood, James added. Sarah approached me with the concept after reading an early draft of Fractured Horizons. She recognized your talent immediately, saw how the industry would use you up and spit you out. The recording device was my idea, Sarah continued. I needed to document how quickly they'd start interfering with your vision, how they'd try to commercialize your art. I laughed incredulously. And marrying me? Was that for the documentary too? Sarah had the decency to look uncomfortable. That wasn't planned, it just happened. Bullshit, I spat. You've been manipulating me from the beginning, studying my process, you said. Yes, to understand what writers go through, she insisted. To capture the authentic struggle of creation and compromise. The documentary follows several writers, but you were always the centerpiece. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. So our entire relationship was research. And what about the things you said on the recording? About using me to write you the role of a lifetime? Sarah and James exchanged glances. I needed you to confront me, she admitted. The documentary needed that conflict, that moment of revelation. I knew the recording would push you over the edge. You're saying you deliberately sabotaged our marriage for your film? I felt dizzy with the betrayal. It wasn't like that, James interjected. Sarah genuinely cares. Don't, I cut him off. Don't try to explain her feelings to me. Sarah stepped toward me, and I instinctively backed away. Alex, I know how this sounds, but the documentary is important. It's exposing the way this industry treats its most essential creative voices. By treating me exactly the way you claim to be fighting against? I shook my head in disbelief. The irony would be beautiful if it weren't my life you've turned into your cautionary tale. We have footage of the producers discussing how to water down your script, James offered, as if this might somehow redeem them. Secret recordings of them planning to take creative control away from you once principal photography wrapped. So you were protecting me, I said bitterly. By deceiving me. Sarah's expression hardened. Don't act so innocent. You've been emotionally torturing me for weeks, using sex as a weapon, rewriting James's character out of petty jealousy. Because I thought you were cheating on me. And that justified it? She challenged. You could have talked to me. Instead, you chose manipulation. The accusation hit home with brutal accuracy. In my pain, I'd become the very thing I feared she was, calculating, manipulative, willing to use intimacy as a tool. We stood in tense silence until James spoke again. The documentary is important, Alex. It could change things for writers in this town. At what cost? I asked quietly. My marriage? My trust? My dignity? Sarah's face softened slightly. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I never expected to… She stopped herself. To what? I pressed. To fall in love with you, she whispered. That part wasn't in the plan. I searched her face, looking for the truth behind the performance. After months of living with her, loving her, I still couldn't tell when she was acting and when she was genuine. How convenient, I said finally. Another perfect line for your documentary. James shifted uncomfortably. Alex, for what it's worth, your script is brilliant. The rewrites too, even though they were motivated by misunderstanding. That talent is why Sarah approached you in the first place. So, I should be flattered? That my wife married me because she recognized my marketable skills? Sarah flinched. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Sarah? Explain to me how any of this isn't a profound violation of trust. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, apparently at a loss for words for the first time since I'd known her. I think, I said slowly, that both of you should leave. Now? Alex, Sarah began. Now, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. James nodded, touching Sarah's arm. Come on, he needs space. She resisted briefly, then gathered her purse. At the door, she turned back. This isn't how I wanted things to end. I laughed hollowly. Isn't it? Isn't this the perfect third act twist for your documentary? The writer, betrayed by the very industry he trusted, including his own wife? Sarah's eyes filled with tears that looked genuine. But then, she was an actress, an excellent one. Check your email, James said before they left. I sent you something you should see before you make any final judgments. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone in the suddenly cavernous house. I stood motionless for what felt like hours, trying to process the magnitude of the deception and my own role in the ugly game we'd been playing. Finally, I retrieved my laptop and opened my email. There, from James, was a video attachment with a simple message: watch this before you decide. With trembling fingers, I pressed play, steeling myself for whatever final blow awaited me in this elaborate deception. The video began without introduction. A conference room at the studio, captured from what appeared to be a hidden camera. Around the table sat the producer, director, and 2 studio executives I recognized from preliminary meetings. The timestamp showed a date 3 weeks earlier, when production on Fractured Horizons had just begun. About the writer, the producer was saying, swirling amber liquid in a crystal tumbler. Mercer. Talented kid, one executive nodded. Raw, but the script has depth. Critics will eat it up. Too much depth, the other executive countered. Audiences want clarity, not complexity. We need to streamline it, make the character more accessible. The producer leaned forward. We've got Rothwell. That's our insurance policy. He can elevate mediocre material. Once we're in production, we can gradually edge Mercer out. Bring in Johnston to punch up the script. Johnston, a veteran writer known for his crowd-pleasing, commercially successful work. The antithesis of everything I'd tried to accomplish with fractured horizons. "What about his contract?" the director asked, looking uncomfortable. "Mercer has approval on rewrites." The producer laughed. "Contracts are suggestions, not commandments. We'll make his life difficult enough that he'll be begging to step back. Trust me, I've managed temperamental writers before." The video continued, detailing their strategy to undermine my creative control while extracting maximum value from my work. They discussed specific scenes they planned to alter, character motivations they intended to simplify, how they would position these changes as audience-friendly improvements rather than the fundamental betrayal they were. My stomach churned as I watched these strangers casually plotting to dismantle my vision, to reduce art to algorithm. What hurt most was the director's gradual shift from reluctant participant to enthusiastic collaborator, suggesting his own ways to fix my supposedly problematic narrative choices. The video cut to a different day, different meeting. This time Sarah was present, seated quietly in a corner, seemingly taking notes. The same executives discussed marketing strategies, including how to minimize my involvement in press junkets. "Nobody pays to see the writer," one laughed. "Keep him working on the sequel treatment while we handle the media." As they continued, the camera caught Sarah's expression, a controlled mask slipping to reveal genuine disgust. Her eyes met the camera briefly, a silent communication with whoever was recording. The video jumped again. James, in his trailer, talking directly to the camera. "Alex, if you're watching this, I know how it looks. Sarah approached me 6 months ago with evidence of systemic exploitation in the industry. Writers being pushed out of their own projects, denied credit, treated as disposable. She'd been gathering footage for nearly 2 years, but needed someone with industry clout to help access the right rooms, the right conversations." He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely troubled. "I agreed because I've seen it happen too many times. Brilliant scripts gutted to maximize opening weekend numbers. Writers like you silenced?" Another cut. Sarah in an unfamiliar apartment. Her appearance different. Hair pulled back severely, no makeup, nothing like the polished woman I'd married. "The documentary was my idea," she said directly to camera. "Born from watching my father. A screenwriter you probably never heard of because they buried his work, rewrote it until it was unrecognizable, then relegated him to a small credit at the end of a bloated list." She looked down briefly. "Meeting you wasn't part of the plan. You were supposed to be a subject, one of several writers we were tracking, but then we actually met at that festival and—" She trailed off, visibly struggling. "I didn't lie about connecting with your work," she continued finally. "That night at the hotel bar, those were real conversations, real feelings. What I didn't tell you was that I already knew who you were, had already read your script because it was being circulated as the next big thing they were planning to acquire and gut." She looked directly into the camera, her eyes fierce with a conviction I recognized. "I married you because I fell in love with you, but I continued the documentary because I believed in it. Those aren't mutually exclusive truths, Alex, though I know it feels that way now." Another cut. The producer, caught in a private conversation with a studio executive. "Mercer's wife is sniffing around asking questions. Apparently she's friends with Rothwell. Keep her happy." The executive shrugged. "Promise her an audition or something. Once we've squeezed what we need from her husband, we can throw her a bone." The producer smirked. "Pretty thing like that probably married him thinking she'd get her big break anyway. They all do." The video continued, a damning compilation of conversations, meetings, and private moments revealing a coordinated effort to exploit not just me, but countless writers. Names I recognized, scripts I'd admired, all subjected to the same systematic dismantling of creative vision in service of commercial expedience. It ended with James again, looking tired. "I don't expect this to fix anything between you and Sarah. That's between you two. But I thought you deserved to know what's really happening with your film, and why we've been meeting in secret. The documentary releases next month at Sundance. Your name isn't mentioned unless you want it to be. That much, at least, we can control." The screen went black. I sat motionless, laptop still open, mind racing to process everything. The studio's betrayal felt almost secondary to the complex tangle of truth and deception in my marriage. Sarah had manipulated me, used me as a subject without my consent, and yet she'd also been trying, in her misguided way, to protect me and others like me, to expose a system designed to extract value from creativity while discarding the creators. I closed the laptop and moved to the window, watching darkness settle over our neighborhood. Cars passed, people walked dogs. Life continued in its ordinary rhythms, while my reality had been completely upended. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Can we talk?" I stared at those 3 words, weighing all they contained. Could we talk? Was there anything left to say that wasn't tainted by manipulation and counter-manipulation? Had we both been playing characters for so long that our true selves were now inaccessible to each other? Another text followed. "I never lied about loving you. That's the one truth in all of this." I thought about the scenes I'd been rewriting, the character I'd been systematically diminishing out of jealousy and suspicion. How different was I from the executives plotting to reshape my script until it lost all meaning? We'd all been trying to control narratives that weren't solely ours to control. My phone buzzed again. Not Sarah this time, but my agent. Studio called. They want to discuss adjustments to the 3rd act. Red flag. Call me. So it was beginning, exactly as the video had shown. The slow, insidious process of creative theft dressed up as collaboration. I took a deep breath and made my decision. I texted Sarah back. "I'll be at the coffee shop on Wilshire in an hour. Just you?" Then I called my agent. "Tell the studio I'm sick. Buy me a week. I need to make some decisions." An hour later, I sat in the corner of the nearly empty coffee shop, watching the door. When Sarah entered, she was dressed simply. Jeans, t-shirt, hair pulled back, looking more like the woman from the documentary footage than the polished actress I'd been living with. She approached cautiously, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." "I watched the video," I said without preamble. She nodded, eyes never leaving mine. And I don't know what's real anymore. Not the studio, not us, not even my own reactions. I leaned forward slightly. But I do know one thing. I won't let them take my script. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, followed by cautious hope. "What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'd like to see the full documentary before it premieres." I paused, watching her carefully. "The real question is, what are you going to do, Sarah? About us. About this marriage built on research and manipulation." She flinched at the harshness of my words, but didn't deny them. "I meant what I said in my text. I do love you, Alex. That wasn't part of the plan. Love without trust isn't love," I countered. "It's just another form of manipulation." "I know." She looked down at her untouched coffee. "I've justified everything by telling myself it was for a greater purpose, that exposing the corruption was worth the deception, but seeing what it's done to you, to us." She trailed off. "The documentary is important," I said finally, surprising myself with the admission. "What they're doing to writers, to artists of all kinds, needs to be exposed." Her eyes widened slightly. "You mean that?" "Yes. But so is honesty between 2 people who supposedly love each other." I took a deep breath. "I don't know if we can salvage anything from this, Sarah. The foundation is too compromised." "I understand," she whispered, and I believed she did. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not for making the documentary, but for how I made it. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of all that had happened, and all that might never happen now, settling between us like an invisible wall. "What about James?" I asked eventually. A small, sad smile touched her lips. "James is a surprisingly decent man in an indecent business. He agreed to help because he's seen too many writers like you get destroyed. And the things you said on the recording, about using me for my talent?" She met my gaze directly. A calculated performance for an audience I knew was listening. I wanted to provoke a confrontation, to push things to a crisis point. She hesitated. "Though there was truth in it, too. I did think your writing could help my career. Just not in the cold, calculated way I described." I nodded slowly, processing this. "And my tactics these past weeks? The emotional manipulation? The bedroom games?" Transparent, she said simply. Painful, but transparent. We'd both been playing roles, directing scenes, manipulating emotions like characters in one of my scripts. The writer and the actress, using our professional tools in our personal battlefield. I don't know where we go from here, I admitted. Neither do I, she replied with unexpected honesty. But I'd like to figure it out together, if you're willing. She reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but close enough that I could feel her warmth. No more performances. No more recordings. Just two people trying to find their way back to truth. I looked at her hand, then at her face. Stripped of artifice now, vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen. The woman I'd fallen in love with, perhaps. Or yet another carefully constructed character. I can't make any promises, I said finally. But I'll read the complete script first before deciding. She nodded, understanding my metaphor. It's a long one. Complicated. Parts of it might be hard to get through. Most worthwhile stories are. For the first time that day, a genuine smile touched her lips. Ever the writer. Ever the actress, I countered, but without the bitterness that would have colored those words hours earlier. We sat in the quiet coffee shop as evening deepened outside. Two storytellers whose greatest fiction had been the version of ourselves we'd presented to each other. Whether we could now create something authentic from the ruins of those performances remained to be seen. But for the first time since discovering the recording, I felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. Not for a Hollywood ending. I'd written enough scripts to know the falseness of those, but for a human one. Messy, complicated, and imperfect. Yet possibly, improbably real. As we left the coffee shop and stepped into the cool night air, Sarah asked, "What will you do about the studio?" I thought about the executives planning to dismantle my vision piece by piece, about the system designed to extract value while discarding creators. "I'm going to write them a new ending," I said quietly. "One they won't see coming." She nodded, understanding. We walked to our separate cars, pausing at the distance that now defined us. "Good night, Alex," she said softly. "Good night, Sarah. We didn't say, 'I love you.'" Those words had been performed too many times to trust their meaning now. Instead, we offered something more valuable. Silence uncluttered by manipulation. A moment of genuine connection in a relationship built on artifice. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, but it was, perhaps, the first honest scene we'd played together in months. And for a writer and an actress who'd lost their way in a landscape of falsehoods, it was a beginning worth exploring.